Welcome back to one of 2021's more interesting 4X strategy games, Old World. Old World released a few months ago on May 6, but technically went into 1.0 on the 1st of July of this year. The reason why we're talking about it today is because of these recent announcements. You can see them on screen. There's a Steam and GOG release and some DLC, and the first real meaty official DLC for Old World. So in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about what Old World is for those unfamiliar, or for those who need a little reminder, and we're also going to talk about my thoughts on Old World, and finally, of course, we're going to talk about this news, because it is some pretty big, meaty news. Let's jump straight in, and first and foremost, I thought it might not hurt just to quickly remind ourselves about what Old World actually is. In case you didn't see my review when it first came out, Old World is, I argue, and many others follow this mantra as well, essentially a nice blend of civilization, Sid Meier's Civilization 5 and Civilization 6, with some of the more sort of family dynasty building elements of franchises like Crusader Kings. In many ways, it is the ultimate blend between the two of them, and as you can see on screen, you can see different elements, right? You can see that pop-up just then. That was a narrative event. Down the bottom left, you can see my character, who I'm playing as, my ruler, Philip the Founder. A man with one eye, but more importantly, with some unique traits that he's picked up throughout his life and will continue to pick up throughout this gameplay. I should mention, by the way, this is a new gameplay. I sat down today to record some. From the very beginning, I just skipped the first few turns, but otherwise, here we are in Old World. You can see up the top right as well, you can see my court members, my queen, and my son, who will be my heir when I perish. In Old World, 1 turn is 1 year, and as you can imagine, you tend to not really live too far beyond the age of 60 or 70. We are talking the old world, after all. And of course, if you go out fighting, you could be even more unlucky. In fact, during this gameplay, my son becomes a drunk. And I think that really tells a really interesting story about how Old World uses character development and family dynasties to structure its gameplay. What else does Old World do before we move into these updates that we heard today? Well, broadly speaking, Old World uses a really interesting system called orders. The developers behind it, Mohawk Studios, and at their head, Soren Johnson, who, in case you don't know, was the lead designer on Civilization 4, and also worked extensively on Off-World Trading Company. 2 big, successful strategy games. Old World, therefore, is left in good hands, and if anybody has been following Old World's development like I have, granted, not super closely, I have been more focused, in case you couldn't tell, on Humankind recently, but I do follow it, and it's really impressive, actually. Mohawk Games are working really hard on it. Look, here, by the way, just to quickly interrupt, this is the sort of inheritance, the family tree dynamic. This is the very beginning of a game, and I'm going to try and marry off my son to the Romans to try and build up a bit of a relationship with them. You'll see how that works out later in the video. Anyway, Old World has a good base behind it. Really strong historical strategy game development and experience behind it. It is, of course, an indie game, though. Mohawk Studios, right? Soren Studios. These are not big mainstream. And when Old World launched, it launched as an Epic exclusive. Like it or lump it, that's what it was. And at the time, Epic didn't even have achievements. However, I'm stoked to realize today that they are finally adding achievements to Epic Games. And now finally, I have to admit, I am a bit of an achievement hunter, and now finally I can really get into Epic Games. And if you'd like to as well, by the way, quick plug, I do have a creator code, JumboPixel. If you're ever buying anything on Epic Games, I would really appreciate it if you'd smash that creator code in there. It doesn't really provide a lot to me, but every little bit counts. Anyway, let's move back to Old World. So, Old World has a couple of really interesting mechanics. The first one is orders. Basically, the way to think about orders is you have 15 actions in a turn, let's call them, and you could choose to, in theory, use them all on one unit or spread them out, right? Move every unit 2 tiles, or you can bunch your orders into one and really stretch it out, just like I did there to demonstrate with this settler heading towards the city site of Greece. In fact, I did it last turn, but you probably saw that play out. The order system is really fascinating. It doesn't just apply to unit movements though, it's everything. It's how you order combat, construction, diplomacy, in-game events, all sorts. A very fascinating system that is backed up by a system called legitimacy. Basically, every ruler, including Philip the Settler, as I'm playing right now, essentially has to prove their worthiness, that they deserve to rule. And so as you play through, whether they're a child and you're choosing where to send them to school, or whether they are you, and you are leading your civilization, you can do certain things, accomplishing ambitions, for example, building wonders, gaining a title like the Avenger or the Settler, as I am. Your legitimacy increases, granting you more orders per turn and improving your overall sort of reputation within the game. It's a really fascinating system, and I think it does a great job at including those Crusader Kings developments. You know, you pick up character traits, you have events. Like I said at the start of the video, my son turned into a drunk, probably because I pushed him too hard. But I can't help it. I need to leave somebody in charge of the Empire who can actually live up to Philip the Settler. Beyond those sort of more interesting mechanics though, it is of course worth noting that Old World has a huge roster of in-game events. If you thought Humankind had a lot of events, think again. You probably didn't, but Old World has over 3,000, and that actually is a point worth noting. There's quite a lot of reading in this game. If you are against a 4X game that really pulls you in and requires you to build relationships with your characters and really carefully plan and read the events, it might not quite be for you. And to be honest, it put me off a little bit at first, but by the time I'd finished, I really, really enjoyed it. And you can see here, there are some really familiar sort of civilization-like, Humankind-like even, mechanics to Old World that you would expect from a 4X strategy game, right? You can see here I'm sending my warrior into battle. Earlier I was using my workers to build improvements on my cities. It's a very comfortable and familiar formula, but there's a lot of detail in it. And if you like a more detailed experience, Old World, absolutely for you. Now that I've talked a bit about Old World and my thoughts on it, what's the news from today? So, we had some pretty interesting developments. Old World has been confirmed now to be coming to both Steam and GOG next year during Q2 of 2022. The game officially released on the May 6th, according to its Epic Games listing, but most sources cite the 1st of July as its official release date. That's when it went into 1.0. My understanding, and I don't actually have this concrete, but I remember we talked about it a lot when Old World first came out, was that it had a 1-year exclusivity contract with Epic Games. That would align fairly well with what they've hinted at when it will be releasing to Steam and GOG. That is, again, just to remind you, Q2 of 2022, and spring, actually, it says in the trailer. So my autumn, your spring. Seasons are difficult, but Q2 makes sense. What more do we know? We also know that when it launches on Steam and GOG, and of course it will continue to be on Epic Games as well, it's also receiving a DLC pack. Now, they haven't really said anything about it at all, except for, and I note, that they've called it an expansion campaign, which may or may not mean that you don't see it in this more sort of sandboxy environment that I'm playing in now, right? But rather the sort of in-game campaigns, and any Old World players still listening at this point will note, maybe it's similar to I think it's called Rise of Carthage, I'm pretty sure. It's probably similar to the Rise of Carthage campaign, but we'll probably also see a little bit spill through into the main game, right? It would be very strange if we didn't see some more civs, for example, some more events, some more whatever. I expect we'll see a meaty addition to Old World, rather than just one single-player sort of scenario campaign. Either way, it's pretty exciting news. For me personally, I'm actually just full balls deep into playing it on Epic Games. I don't mind anymore. I'm stoked that they've got the achievements coming out. I can handle having a game in Epic Games and everything else in Steam. I'm a big boy. But if you can't, or if you prefer the functionality or whatever on Steam, which, like I say, I kind of do in general, then this is exciting news for you, because Old World will be accessible for you on Steam around the middle of next year, if not a little bit earlier. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you'd like to see more Old World, do let me know in the description below. I quite enjoy it. It is a more complex experience. It's not one that I've completely delved into, unlike Humankind. So I'm certainly not an expert. Not that I'm an expert in Humankind, let's be real. Anybody who's seen my live streams knows that. But I haven't fully really dived into Old World, and it might be something that I'd like to do in future. Anyway, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.